Welcome to this online service of the Unitarian Universalist Church of the South Hills, also known as Sunnyhill. Our mission is to create a more just and compassionate community within and beyond our walls. My name is Mary Jo Hennessy, and I serve as a worship associate for this congregation. If you are a newcomer or visitor to our congregation, please let us know you're here by posting a comment on our live Facebook feed or our YouTube feed, or by getting in touch with our membership director, Bethany Thornton, at sunnyhillmembership@gmail.com. We would love to let you know how you can connect with our congregation even during this time when our building is closed. Our opening words today are titled "In Need of Healing," and they were written by Maureen Killoran. Welcome, you who are in need of healing, you who are confused and have been betrayed. Welcome with your problems and your pain. Welcome too, your joys and your wonderings. Welcome your need to hope, your longing for assurance. Instead of answers, here may you find safety for your questions. Instead of promises, may you find community for your struggles, people with hands and hearts to join you in engaging the challenges and changes of our days. Once again, welcome to this online service.
Please join us in saying the words for lighting our chalice. Blessed is the fire that burns deep in our soul. It is the fire of reason, the fire of compassion, the fire of community, the fire of justice, and the fire of faith. It is the fire of love burning deep in the human heart. Please rise in body or spirit and join in singing our hymn, Just as Long as I Have Breath.
Just as long as I have breath, I must answer yes to life. Though with pain I made my way, still with hope I meet each day. If they ask what I did well, tell them I said yes to life. Just as long as vision lasts, I must answer yes to truth. In my dream and in my dark, always that elusive spark. If they ask what I did well, tell them I said yes to truth. Just as long as my heart beats, I must answer yes to love. Disappointment pierced me through, still I kept on loving you. If they ask what I did best, tell them I said yes to love.
A wise old man once owned a precious coin. One day, as he sat gazing at this precious coin and rejoicing in its great beauty, a thought occurred to him. He thought, it isn't right that I should be the only person to have the pleasure of possessing this golden coin. What use is it if no one shares it? And so he went out and he gave the coin to a child who was passing by. Well, the child couldn't believe her luck, and she couldn't take her eyes off of this shining gold coin. Then she had an idea. She thought, I'll give this coin to my mom because she needs so many things, and this coin will make her very happy. Of course, the child's mother was delighted with the coin, such an unexpected solution to so many of her problems. And she pondered in her mind how she might spend it and what she would buy first. And as she was thinking about all this, there was a knock at the door, and there stood a poor man who was begging for money. And the woman thought, poor soul, he has nothing. And here we are, pretty much getting by. And so she gave the gold coin to the beggar. The beggar was speechless. This coin could be turned into food for him for a month. And he made his way back to the subway where he slept, and there he noticed a new resident who had just arrived, a poor guy who was obviously in bad shape, who couldn't even stand or walk on his own, with no chance of getting anywhere near someone who might be able to help him or give him money. And so the beggar thought, I guess he needs this more than I do. And he pressed the gold coin into the other man's thin, cold hand. That evening, the wise old man, remember the wise old man from the beginning of the story? The wise old man walked through the subway, and he noticed the injured beggar and stopped to speak to him. The beggar couldn't remember the last time anyone had bothered to actually speak to him and listen to him. After a while, the wise old man put his arm around the beggar's shoulder and said, my friend, I've nothing left to give you except my friendship. And a tear rolled down the cheek of the beggar. How could he ever repay this great kindness that had changed for him a dark night into a new dawn. With his shaking, aching hands, he reached into his pocket, brought out the gold coin, and gave it to his newfound friend, the wise old man. And the beggar said, "Thank you for loving me." May we all remember that the coin of love and compassion is always ours to give, even in the darkest and most trying of times. Each week at this time in the service, we share joys and sorrows that have been submitted by members of the congregation. We share both the things that we're celebrating and the things that we're mourning, so they need not be held alone. After each joy or sorrow I read, please respond with me by saying, "We hold you in our hearts." This week there are two sorrows that were submitted last week. The first is from Angela Klein, who says, "Please think good thoughts for my niece, Jeannie Crouch. She is undergoing chemo for stage 2 breast cancer and is having a difficult time with allergic reactions. She has 2 children, 1 young teen and 1 severely autistic. It is a difficult situation. Thank you for your positive thoughts." For Angela, for Jeannie, and their family, we hold you in our hearts. Also a sorrow from Colleen Kimberlin. She says, "Like almost all parents, I am struggling with the decision of what to do with my daughter McKenna's education for the coming school year. Please pray that administrators make wise decisions that protect the health and lives of their students and their students' families, for the mental health of McKenna and other students who will be left out of schools that will not be offering remote option as they transition to alternative educational paths, and for parents like me for whom there is no good solution. For Colleen and McKenna, for everyone who's struggling with difficult decisions about education this coming year, we hold you in our hearts." Let us also bear in mind not just these sorrows, but all those joys and sorrows that are held too closely to be shared at this time. Please join me in the spirit of meditation or prayer. There are times when all seems cloaked in darkness. Times when the sun seems to have set in our souls. Times when we can't see where the path leads, when we can't see what our next move should be. There are times when our minds and hearts grow numb. Times when we cannot feel warmth and love. Times when fear and hatred seem to envelop all, when the wells of compassion have run dry. There are times when the universe seems devoid of any loving presence, any force for good in the face of evil. Times when we feel isolated and disconnected from all else. When the only answer to our cries is cold, disconsolate silence. Let us take a moment of silence to consider these challenging times, not to get lost in despair, but to remember we need not hold these things alone. May we bear in mind that the sun's light will return even in the darkest of times, that love will one day pierce through the armor of despair, that a sense of the goodness of life will return to us by and by. And may we always remember that no burden need be carried alone. Amen. The song the choir is about to sing was composed by Mark Miller, a church musician and songwriter based in New Jersey. His text for this piece was, according to the notes on the sheet music, found etched on the walls of a cellar in Cologne, Germany, written by a Jew hiding from Nazi persecution during World War II. That original text, translated, reads as follows: I believe in the sun even when it's not shining. I believe in love even when I don't feel it. I believe in God even when God is silent. I'm grateful to Jeff Vipperman for his hard work in editing this beautiful virtual choir piece.
I believe in the sun. I believe in the sun, even when
Each and every one of us, at some point in our lives, has had a dark night of the soul. A time when the sun, even if it is shining, cannot warm our hearts. A time when we cannot feel love or even sense its presence. A time when the universe seems to hold no message for us but the utter and complete silence of the abyss. Such moments might occur as the result of a tremendous loss, the death of a loved one, the end of a relationship, an unwanted prognosis, the loss of a job or career. And sometimes those dark nights come with no clear antecedent, no clear cause or reason. Those moments become etched in our souls. They leave their marks on us in deep and profound ways. No one wants to experience these dark nights of the soul. No one wants the sadness and despair that accompany these moments. No one wants to go through such gut-wrenching pain. And yet, these dark nights are an inevitable part of human experience. And without them, we are not really experiencing the fullness of life. Without the darkness of human despair, however cruel or unfair it may seem, we might never fully appreciate the light of human kindness. In my training to become a minister, I spent a summer working as a hospital chaplain. And during that time, I was witness to many dark nights of the soul. It was a long, hot, glaring North Carolina summer, but inside the hospital, there were intensely dark nights amid the bright lights. I particularly remember the 4th of July weekend that summer when I was the on-call chaplain. And in case you're wondering, you do not want to be anywhere near the trauma unit of a hospital during the 4th of July weekend, as you'll see some truly horrific things, especially if you're at a level 1 trauma center, as was the case with me. Victims of traffic accidents, fireworks accidents, shootings, stabbings, you name it, were flown in by helicopter and brought in by ambulance to the hospital where I was working that weekend. I spent most of one night with a family that had shown up at the hospital during the middle of my on-call shift. A young man named Justin, who had been in a terrible motorcycle accident, died a slow death that night in the intensive care unit as I sat with his family at his bedside. Over the course of the night, family members kept showing up until there were more than a dozen people gathered in Justin's tiny room, ranging in age from about 15 to 75. I listened to them talk about Justin. They told me about how he had managed to turn his life around in the last couple of years, going from being an angry teen in trouble with drugs to a proud high school graduate with a bright future. He was supposed to have started college that fall. The entire family was shocked and understandably distraught. But Justin's mother was simply wretched and completely inconsolable. I was really worried about her, and I did my very best to comfort her. And I did manage to get her to at least sit down and take a few sips of water. but she was still in pretty bad shape. So I finally went out to the charge nurse in the unit and said, we need to find a way to help this poor woman or she's going to faint or worse. Fortunately, the nurse was able to find a nursing assistant who wasn't busy at the moment, and she spent the next 2 or 3 hours focusing entirely on Justin's mother. She rubbed her back and shoulders, she held her, she got her to drink a little more water, she cried with her. I was so grateful for her presence in that room. Watching this nursing assistant taught me more about kindness than I had ever really learned before. In her poem titled Kindness, Naomi Shihab Nye writes, before you know kindness as the deepest thing inside, you must know sorrow as the other deepest thing. You must wake up with sorrow. You must speak it till your voice catches the thread of all sorrows and you see the size of the cloth. Then it is only kindness that makes sense anymore. Only kindness that ties your shoes and sends you out into the day to gaze at bread. Only kindness that raises its head from the crowd of the world to say, it is I you have been looking for, and then goes with you everywhere like a shadow or a friend. Dark nights filled with despair and sorrow are sometimes nearly unbearable, and I would never wish them on anyone. At the same time, it is only sorrow that can teach us the meaning and the value of kindness. In many ways, our most important and profound spiritual growth occurs during these dark nights of the soul, though it is entirely invisible to us at the time. And I would strongly suggest that you never try to tell someone in the midst of abject despair and sorrow that this experience will help them with their spiritual growth. It's just not helpful. In fact, it can make things worse and is the very opposite of kindness in this situation. In the moment when someone is experiencing deep grief or trauma, the best you can do is to be fully present. Platitudes won't help. Assurances that everything will be okay won't help. Rarely, if ever, do any words, however wise they might be, help. What helps is to be present and to be kind. And when you are alone during a dark night of the soul, which is often the case, being present and being kind are just as important as when you are with others. You must be fully present to your own despair, however difficult that might be, if you are to have any chance of getting through it. And you must be as kind to yourself as you would be to a loved one, if you are to have any chance of knowing peace. Over the past 4 months or so, all of us have been experiencing sorrow and despair. They're in the air around us. Sorrow and despair seem to be everywhere at this particular moment in history. The pandemic has led to losses for practically every person on Earth. In some cases, those losses have included the deaths of one or more loved ones, which are irredeemable losses. In other cases, what's been lost is perhaps less momentous, but still significant, like the loss of employment, the loss of feeling safe, the loss of a sense of normalcy, the loss of confidence in our ability to cope with all the losses we are experiencing. And in addition to the pandemic, we've reached this time of reckoning with regard to racial justice, and we're beginning to see the real depth of our problems in this country, our dysfunctional economic and social and political systems, and the lack of real leadership at the very moment when it is most needed. Anxiety, grief, despair, and sorrow are all around us and within us. If you haven't experienced any dark nights of the soul lately, it's possible that you have not yet squarely faced the reality of our situation. And facing that reality is the first step toward dealing with it in a healthy way. Sadly, most of us lack the spiritual skills to deal with our own sorrow. So, in the words of the spiritual teacher and author Richard Rohr, we resort to addictions and other distractions to get us through our pain and sufferings, which does not bode well for the future of humanity. Now, honestly, distraction and denial can be healthy coping mechanisms. You can't be fully engaged in the struggles of the world and in your own struggles 100% of the time. Each of us must find ways to sometimes leave things behind, if only for a little while, so that we can later come back and approach things with a new and slightly different perspective. But there is such a thing as distracting ourselves to death. So we need to be aware at some point that it's time to put the distractions away and start dealing with difficult realities again. And when you do return to dealing with these difficult realities, it helps to bring something like faith with you. For me, faith does not mean trusting the inscrutable wisdom of some cold and distant deity. It means understanding that even in the darkest moments, the sun, while unseen, is still there. That love, while unfelt, still holds us all. That the voice of compassion, while unheard, still speaks. Faith for me is knowing in the deepest way possible that divine presence is manifested through human presence and human kindness, through deep and abiding compassion. Faith is what reminds us of the wholeness that can be known only through brokenness. As in this poem titled The Unbroken by Rashani Leah. There is a brokenness out of which comes the unbroken, a shatteredness out of which blooms the unshatterable. There is a sorrow beyond all grief, which leads to joy, and a fragility out of whose depths emerges strength. There is a hollow space too vast for words, through which we pass with each loss, out of whose darkness we are sanctioned into being. There is a cry deeper than all sound, whose serrated edges cut the heart as we break open to the place inside, which is unbreakable and whole, while learning to sing. thinking back to my experience at the hospital on that night some years ago, I once again see the ways in which each of us is held in the arms of compassion at any given time, in wholeness and in brokenness. While we cannot always be aware of that compassion that surrounds us, we can do our best to hold that awareness for others and ask others to hold that awareness for us when we ourselves are not able to do so. I hope and pray that during our dark nights of the soul, we might all serve as sources of kindness, loving presence, and compassion for one another and for ourselves. May it be so. Amen. Please rise in body and or spirit and join us in singing Abide with Me.
Abide with me, fast falls the eventide. The darkness deepens, still with me abide. When other helpers fail and comforts flee, help of the helpless, oh, abide with me. Swift to its close ebbs out life's little day. Earth joys grow dim, its glories pass away. Change and decay in all around I see. O thou who changes not, abide with me. I fear no foe, with thee at hand to bless. Ills have no weight and tears no bitterness. Where is death's sting? Where grave thy victory? I triumph still if thou abide with me.
We'll now give and receive our morning offering. This week, our designated offering will go toward a new program being developed called Policing and Race in Mount Lebanon. Policing and Race in Mount Lebanon is a 5-part Zoom discussion series being organized by 4 progressive-leaning Mount Lebanon congregations: St. Paul's Episcopal, Temple Emmanuel, Sunset Hills Presbyterian, and Sunnyhill. This program will feature local experts speaking on topics related to policing and race, and it will include small group discussions, breakout groups, oriented toward organizing concrete local action. Funds raised in this offering will go toward speaker fees for this program. More information on this series will be available soon, so please stay tuned for that. If you'd like to make a donation via our online giving system, you can do so one of 2 ways. You can go to sunnyhill.org and click on the button that says Online Giving, and then follow the step-by-step instructions. Or you can give by text at 412-324-3130. You can also mail a check the old-fashioned way, and you can find our mailing address also on our website, sunnyhill.org. The piece that Buddy is playing for our offertory today, The Crisis by Ennio Morricone, was introduced to me by a fellow ministry student during my time working at the hospital that I referred to in my sermon. When I think back to that time, this song serves as a sort of soundtrack for those memories, and I'm grateful to Buddy for playing it. As you will hear, this piece features a repeated, purposely dissonant note, which for me represents the brokenness that exists even in the midst of wholeness.
Please join us in saying the words for extinguishing our chalice. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. Blow it out. Go ahead, blow it out.
I'll blow it out.
Go ahead, blow it. There you go.
As we enter another week of uncertainty in the world, let us remember that there is only, in the end, one side, that of humanity and the planet. May we work for peace and justice. May we raise our voices with our elected officials and engage as we can in acts of transformation and resistance. And may we remember to take very good care of ourselves, each other, and those we love. May we remember these words adapted from the Unity Prayer. The light of love surrounds us. Love enfolds us. The power of love protects us. Love watches over us. Wherever we are, love is. Go in peace.